story here, and that is that economic development is equal to growth. If you have economic growth, that leads to development in all kinds of ways, and there's no other alternative to growth, essentially, for development. There's a second part of this, and that is that in the long run, what determines growth, in my opinion, is no secret. It's the skills or human capital of the people. But then economists have had some puzzles, and so I'm going to start with a puzzle that only affects economists, and you can humor me for a minute while I talk about how economists have looked at this problem, because there have been some confusing evidence on economic growth and human capital. In particular, about 25 years ago, economists discovered the fact that economic growth was really important. Like some of the examples I'll give you is, we all know of the 2008 recession that hit the US and other places. Well, the 2008 recession is absolutely dwarfed by small improvements in the education system and the impact on the economy. And that's what economic growth is all about. But as economists looked at economic growth, the major question was, what's the role of human capital or skills? All economists believe that human capital is important. But then the analysis that was done introduced some question into that. And in particular, let me show you a picture. What this is a picture you're going to see again. So you have to kind of look at this, and I'm not sure if you can see it down below. Maybe we can move some of the props away so that you can see it. What this is a picture on the horizontal axis. It says conditional years of schooling. I'll give you what conditional means in a second. And on the vertical axis is economic growth rates. And all the dots here are individual countries, and some of them are named. Conditional means that behind this is one other explanatory factor. That is, what level of income did the country start at? And why is that important? Well, if you start behind, all you have to do is copy what everybody else does. And that copying things is a lot easier than inventing and innovating. And so this adjusts for the fact that some countries are copying and some are, like the US, are trying to invent new things. But once you do that, then you get this picture with one problem. There are two puzzles in this picture. The countries I have on the top are the East Asian countries. And the question was always, well, what explains East Asia? Why have they done so much better than this line that explains the relationship between growth and human capital? And on the other end that I have is the Latin American growth puzzle. Economists have looked at Latin America for a long period of time and seen that Latin America has lots of schooling. It's just that they don't grow very much. And they historically have grown at 2% per year, as opposed to the East Asian countries that are growing at 4% per year. Those differences are huge, and I'll show you the implications in a minute. Well, this has been the puzzle that's faced economists for some time, but there's a resolution that brings all of this picture to the current discussions. The resolution is the following. If instead of years of schooling, I measure test scores of individuals, where think of these as math scores, taking a math problem around the world and asking people in different countries to take a math quiz, it turns out that once you take into account math scores against rates of growth, it's again conditional based upon early growth rates. And these are long-run growth rates, by the way, between 1960 and 2000. So this has a big impact. It's over a 40-year period. Once you take into account test scores, everybody falls on the same line. There is no longer an East Asian puzzle or mystery. There is no longer a Latin American puzzle. everybody is on the same line. And what explains this all is the following picture. If I looked at just years of schooling on the horizontal axis against test scores, what you see is East Asian countries learn a lot for every year of schooling. Latin American countries learn a little for every year of schooling. And that completely explains the story. Everything about economic growth is encapsulated in this in the prior picture. Here it is, by the way, for regions of the world, and you see East Asia at the top, you see Sub-Saharan Africa at the bottom, Latin America at the bottom, and in the middle are South Europe, Northern Europe, Central Europe, Middle East, North Africa, and what I've called Commonwealth, which is just the residual British colonies. It's Canada, US, New Zealand, and Australia. But all of these regions are perfectly on this straight line, explained by what people learn. Now, the other thing that isn't apparent from this picture is not only are regions of the world and countries on this line, but that's a very steep line. That is a very steep line that has huge ramifications for the future of countries. So I give a talk like this for the US. I'm going to give this talk about India. It has the same story, no matter where you are. The implications for the economics of the situation are huge. So let me show you how the world shakes out. This is a picture that even if you're in the front row, you can't read it.
Yeah.
Okay? So that's why you have to pay attention to me, because you cannot just read the picture and try to guess what I'm going to say. Okay. Now, what this picture is actually the columns of this are different regions of the world, and I'll point those out in a minute. And the vertical scores